This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut and the occasional pop-in Sebastian Romero. On this week's Weigh-In, we talk to you about Ronda Rousey returning to the MMA octagon to face Gina Carano. I think is how you say it, Carano, on Most Valuable Promotions with Netflix MVP Saturday, May 16th, Intuit Dome, Los Angeles, California. Now, so much to break down that Ronda Rousey is getting back, but more importantly, MVP getting into MMA? Interesting, right? Very. But nonetheless, that is going to be this week's weigh-in, and obviously whatever else comes up in the time of recording. So that is this week's weigh-in. So we jump right into this one. First and foremost, MVP in MMA, interesting. So let's see if we can get you as best as something we need, and we're gonna get you as best as something we could do, and that would be as best as we could get it done here, and that would just be straight out what is going on here. MVP into MMA, like what? I can't stress this enough that who would have ever thought Jake Paul Carano. There it is, Gina Carano. That is what we are going with as the pronunciation for Gina Carano. But nonetheless, it's like I said, you wonder why is MVP going into this and what. So let's take a look at what everybody would want to know. Let's see what we need to know. What is Gina Carano's background? So she's an American actress and, according to Google, American actress and former mixed martial artist. So you know what? Yeah, all right. When I looked at the name, I didn't specifically know, when you do the graphics, all the changes in the MMA, you don't really know exactly who she is. But now I know exactly who she is. Now I know exactly who she is. For all of us Mandalorian fans, we just had that going on. She starred in The Mandalorian. That's crazy. Interesting. So that'll be something. That'll be something fairly interesting. So we'll go ahead and we'll dip down what her MMA record. So she was a woman's bantamweight. And she was 7-1. Her loss came to Chris Cyborg on a Strikeforce event. I know we're supposed to be all about I know we're supposed to be all about Gina here, but if we jump on that Chris Cyborg just really quickly, I know this always happens. He's always telling me this. Why am I always jumping on somebody else? That Chris Cyborg. I don't think there's anybody that has done what she's done, and that's held every promotion's belt. This is why I talk about a lot of times I like boxing better than UFC. You look at boxing, you have WBC, you have WBA, you have IBF, you have let me run through it again. You have WBC, you have Ring Magazine. Well, start again. You have WBC, you have WBO, you have IBF, you have WBA, then you have Ring Magazine. So when you talk about all those major organizations like WBC, WBO, WBA, IBF, when you talk about all of those, you talk about those and you say, okay, and what do they all have in common? They allow their belts to be held simultaneously. And this is where I say, like, okay, why do MMA promotions not do this? Like, let somebody get a Bellator belt along with the UFC belt and then a PFL belt, but it's because they're all trying to make money for themselves. They're all trying to make their own money. And there's a lot of belts. And there's some other belts in boxing too that they just really don't they don't really specifically use as much as they used to, but there's quite some belts we got going on here. So I just kind of feel like Gina Carano was like lost once and then that was it. But last time she fought, according to if this is the right person, last time she fought was in 2009. Wow. Wow. Woo. I wonder, let's talk age here for a minute. I know a lot of people are gonna, she's 43. I know there's a lot, so we could probably pull it up where it'll tell us the upcomings. Tapology. I've been using them a lot lately, Tapology, because they do a lot of good stuff when it um comes to MMA. Here we go. Exactly what we're looking for. Upcoming against Rousey. No. Yeah. Tapology. So this will get you what we need to know. Ronda Rousey 12-2 under MMA. Carano 7-1. Both from United States, obviously. I just gonna chat that. Ronda Rousey from Los Angeles, California, Ronda Rousey fighting out of Los Angeles, California, and Carano fighting out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Ronda Rousey is 39, while according to Tapology, Carano is 44. I think I could check if that's what we got before. I'm just gonna double check Tapology. Double check this Tapology. So Google says 43, but Tapology says Tapology. If I could get it up, Tapology says 44. So 44. Um, Ronda Rousey weighs about 135 pounds, and you're looking at Gina Carano is going to be at 143 pounds. You talk about real close in weight, not too far off. You talk about Carano is 5'8", Rousey's 5'6". She's got Ronda Rousey's got a 66-inch reach. You look at Carano, she's got a 66.5-inch reach. So that half inch is gonna, it won't make much a difference, but you got to understand it's a half inch plus height. So you look at Rousey, it's not that much taller, but it's a little taller. So this is a really, the fight will be conducted at featherweight, 145 pounds. So that's not going to be too bad. But when you look at Ronda Rousey's last fight was 2016, and Carano was 2009. It just makes it fairly interesting. For a scheduled fight. I'm not the only one that looks at this and say MVP is getting in the MMA race, and that's going to be fairly interesting. You would have never thought that they were going to turn themselves to an MMA promotion, but I guess they're turning themselves into an exhibition promotion, I should say. Other than with the few, not the few, but other than like their professional boxers like Amanda Serrano and the Katie Taylor fights, stuff that mostly isn't exhibition, but it's been like that lately. It started out like that with some of the stuff Jake, but he's got a lot of boxers on his on that promotion, as well as his partner, him and the partner Jake. A lot of boxers on there, but I'm excited for this one. I think it's really good. I think this could be interesting. I really don't think this is a bad. They call Ronda Rousey, and they call Gina the Conviction Carano. So that's. I mean, if that don't tell you anything more than what you want to know, there, you know, this is going to be real great. I think it's going to be good. Only ever one loss, and then gave it up. Now, this is where I want to know why did she stop fighting? And that we're gonna get you as an answer on that. I'm sure somebody has asked that question before. A lot of good things to look. Uh, and we're gonna get you. Well, there's um. Let's see. Let's see. She wanted to start acting. That's. I mean, even it says here she never formally retired, but she wanted to start acting. So that's something that I guess is a fairly interesting partake on all fronts. That there's that. So in terms of it, I, I've already touched bases with this. That I like the matchup. What I can't wait to see is, okay, what are some of them undercards going to look like? You know, some of those undercards, what are those going to look like in terms of it? A lot of those undercards, what are those going to look like? Because that could get real interesting. Um, in terms of what they're going to do on those undercards. Because I think they could look really good, depending on what happens. Anything that goes. Right now, they only have one bout on it, so there's not much. There's only one bout on it so far, but I can't wait to see what they start to do with those undercards. Because boy, we're most valuable promotion. Ooh, they're a boxing promotion and they're getting an MMA. I think, and you know what? We just talked about this. Is this possibly in regards to the PFL ending their contract with Jake because he never fought PFL? Because Jake was supposed to fight PFL and he never did. He never got it scheduled. So they parted ways. You wonder if that's got something to do with why MVP is getting into this MMA. Um, you know, let's look at what what MVP's got going on. MVP. Oh, also another thing with MVP, they're having their first. Let me see what it is specifically. So I can get it correct. Let me get it up for you correctly. They're having their first UK event. They're headed to the UK. That's what I was gonna say. They're headed to the UK. So that's a fairly interesting one going on there. That they're having that. That's a really good. That's a really good thing going on there. That you have MVP headed to the UK. So let's go over that MVP schedule. So if we get over this MVP schedule, MVP, the Tapology MVP. So if we get a little bit of this MVP, so they had say I don't know. So let's look at what their past couple months have looked like. Do, 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 do. The up and coming, they got April 5th. It'll be Du Bois versus Harper. They're involved in that. That'll be really good. They got Rousey Carano, which is the May 16th. We talked about some of their previous stuff. We talked about St. Anno Tells, which was pretty good. We talked about Jake versus Anthony Joshua. That was pretty good. They had Fight Night Orlando. That was last year. Another good one. That was Rivera versus Cordoba. And I still say that Angelino should have won that fight. But listen, we're not gonna go backwards here. In terms of MVP, I think I've liked the fights that MVP has brought us last year versus the previous year. We got an Anthony Joshua, Jake Paul. Who cares who won? We all know it was Anthony Joshua. And, I had to eat my words because everybody said, oh, you got to eat your words, bro. You thought Jake was going to win. Guys, I'm okay with that. But nonetheless, we had a good Anthony Joshua fight. I thought that was good no matter what. I thought it was good. I I thought it was good. And we had a good Rivera Cordoba, which was earlier in the year. I said Tells, I thought was pretty good. I really think that in terms of MVP in the last, I want to say like 12 months, they have really scheduled very well. And I think that's a good thing. We're starting to see what the fans want to see. It's just really good stuff. And you can't, you give credit where it's due. And that's one thing I want to talk about. You give credit where it's due. Same thing we talked about Dana White. Dana White has been doing really good scheduling. And there have been rumors around that Dana White that most people want for UFC White House Paddy Pimblett, Conor McGregor. And then there's some people who want Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor. If you ask me, I'm okay with both, but Chandler's been running his mouth about McGregor. I think it's Chandler that was doing it. Let me get it for you. Yeah, Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's been running his mouth. He wants Conor. He wants to face Conor. So bad. But what we do know is January 26th, Dana White confirmed that the long anticipated matchup between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler is no longer in the works for UFC's planned White House event. So obviously we're not getting it at the White House event, but I think I'd rather see Chandler McGregor over McGregor Pimblett, Paddy Pimblett. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me on that, but I would rather see Chandler McGregor. Man, Chandler's been wanting Conor all last year. He kept Conor. He still wants Conor. Listen, we talked about this before. Who's running on here? It's not Michael Chandler who's running here. Michael Chandler wants this fight so bad, and Dana's willing to Dana White is willing to set it up. He's like, hey, I want to see this. It just is one of those things where it's like, all right, Chandler really wants it. And I think it's an interesting thing. Now, do I think McGregor's in shape to win this fight? Well, we haven't seen McGregor fight in a while. And with that being said, I don't really think. Give me a second here, AO. I don't really think Connor's in a position to win that fight. And if he does, I don't think it'll be by knockout. I think it'll be on the scorecard. But you know what? If there's one thing I've learned is you never doubt Conor. You never doubt Conor McGregor. You never doubt old McGregor because McGregor he's a savage through and through. And everybody doubted him against Jose Aldo, and he was able to get it done. So, with that being said, a lot of people said this. This is another thing. Since we're on the topic of Conor, and we were on the topic of MVP, a lot of people want to see McGregor, Jake Paul, and I don't really know if Jake Paul would win that fight. And I know everybody's going to be like, "Well, what do you mean? Conor boxed Floyd Money Mayweather well. He didn't win the fight, but he well enough that I kind of believe that if he brings that McGregor back, I don't see Jake being able to stop McGregor. You know, a lot of people said, what happens if it was MMA? First of all, if it's MMA, Jake does not win at all. At all. If they get a McGregor Jake Paul in an MMA ring, that's it. He doesn't win at all. Let me say that. But if we can get McGregor Jake Paul in a boxing ring now, as much as you all know, I'm big on Jake. I'm big on Jake Paul because I thought he was going to beat Anthony Joshua. I don't. What I saw in Anthony Joshua tells me I don't think he's going to be in a position to take out Conor McGregor if they make it happen. I don't see Jake winning over McGregor. I don't. I see that during Anthony Joshua, Jake didn't. It looked like Jake didn't take it serious. It looked like it wasn't a full training camp. It looked. I get you got guys. You got a great team. You got a good team backing you. You got really good boxing coaches. That's great, but that's only half the battle here. And you in terms of Jake, he's got to do better. And that Joshua fight was well, it went how everybody else expected, not how I thought it was going to go because everybody knows that I thought Jake was going to win all the way. You know, as much as everybody told me, everybody was like sending in. They're like, no, Jake's not going to win that year. Man, Jake's not going to win. Jake's not going to win. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see. And I had to eat my words because Jake did not win. So there was that. So it's definitely one of those things where it's like, if he's up against McGregor, I don't know how much you're going to expect me to sit there and say Jake is going to beat McGregor. I don't think so. I don't think he beats McGregor. I think for obvious reasons, there's reasons why I don't think he beats McGregor. Um, because when you look at Conor's really good and he's got a boxing. I get Conor hasn't fought in a while, but you can't tell me Conor isn't still trying to do something. Conor isn't still training somehow, somewhere. You know, but I would like to. Yes, but let's say he's not. If he's not, well, we have that. That's an issue in itself. It's an issue in itself. The McGregor issue there. That if Conor is not, then obviously that there will not be. It will not be a good looking Conor. But for how good he is, you can't say whether he is or isn't, and I say that lightly because we all know Conor McGregor was. I get what everybody says. When I always say this, he built the UFC. I get everybody says he didn't, but I always refine from using that line, that statement, and I like to say he built the champ. If it wasn't for Conor, there would not be no champ going around. He came in there. He was, you know, it's one thing to be cocky and not back it up, but he was backing up a lot of what he said, and he's gotten humbled over these, but he still stayed the same individual. And I think in terms of that, nonetheless of all the other troubles off the out the ring, what I think he's done really great stuff. And I think in terms of McGregor, when you look at Conor, in terms of McGregor, when you look at that, you say, look at when he fought Jose Aldo. Everybody said, you're not going to beat Jose Aldo. There's no way you beat Jose Aldo. Everybody was like, I can't wait till Jose Aldo batters his face in because Jose Aldo is gonna show that this is how it's been. And the fact that he finished Jose Aldo so quick, it tells you that if we get Conor McGregor on an event, there's still Conor. And the UFC, obviously, there's a lot of guys that built UFC. Guys like you got guys like that I felt like that were early. You had Frank Mir that was around there real early, Brock Lesnar that was there. A lot of those older guys that were there that kind of they built the foundation. I don't say Conor built the foundation of the UFC, but I say he sure opened it up to a lot of other. It was, being in Ireland and say you're going to make the UFC, that just doesn't happen. And Conor built a story that he proved could be right, and that's why I don't count McGregor out of a Paul fight after what is seeing the last Paul and the way MVP has been scheduling. I don't see it. I don't see it that far off if it ever hits. I don't see Chandler McGregor that far off either. I think it's going to get real interesting. I know Jake talked about taking some time off from boxing due to the last Anthony Joshua fight, but listen, everybody likes to say, "Oh, this is just the YouTuber that got bored." No, I don't think so. I think he's gonna take his little break, and his adrenaline's gonna come back, and Jake is gonna get back in that ring. Now, obviously, whatever happened happened, but we learned that Jake Paul cannot go up to heavyweight no more. No more, no more Anthony Joshua. Get yourself at a comfortable weight and stay there. You know, that's the way you kind of look at it. But as we know, boxing is kind of being shaped and rechanged as we speak because you got Canelo. That's he. Where his stance on boxing is, whether it is or is not at the final days, it's kind of out. You got Crawford that is Terrence Crawford. We know Terrence Crawford and boxing are about as done as they are for now. But that tells you that boxing is in a really good place for some of those really, really older boxers that have kind of done so much for the sport. You wonder where they lie. And right now they lie where their stance is exactly where they are. Some of them are going to be done boxing, and that's why I say, and even amidst that, like let's amidst any of the changes, Zuffer boxing, Dana White Zuffer boxing, not too bad right now. Only thing I don't like is okay, Zuffer boxing has taken out. Seems like when you see a lot of guys on Zuffer boxing, you no longer see the sponsors on the shorts anymore. And obviously, I get that's probably due to whatever. I think I looked this up before, and I might have explained this before on a pod. I might not have. And I'm going to explain it again. Because I'm pretty sure I might have. So, according to the Googled answer here, the organization requires fighters to wear company-provided uniforms, similar to the model of the UFC. The approach is designed to reinforce the branding for Zuffer. So, I, and you know what I'm gonna say, right? When I told Danny you're getting into this boxing business, don't mess it up. Do it right. And you turn around and you tell them they can't put sponsors on the shorts. Now, the UFC, long time ago, before the fighters, I like to say, started getting broke. Now, mind you, this is a speculatory opinion. No fighter, am I saying no fighter is broke? This is just a vast majority opinion. There is the factuality of this opinion is not really going to be based. I say that is because when you took away sponsors, because the guys used to do that, put the banners behind them and the sponsors, and they used to have that all over the shorts. When you take that away, you take away money those guys can make. So if you're a big fighter like, let's say, Conor McGregor, you were able to put a big set of sponsors all over your shorts. And you tell them they can't do that, but you're telling them they can't do that, but then they're not making more money. You're not like, hey, you can't do this, but you're going to make more money because you can't do this. Now, I don't know the actuality on it or whether it holds up for boxing if they're paying. Oh, so here we go. So here's the reasons for this policy. So in terms of that, Zuffer, it says uniformity and branding. Zuffer enforces a standard look, preventing competitors like rival casinos from appearing on fighters' apparel, a practice that caused issues for the UFC in the past. Because it's something about, and there's up for boxing. This is something a new boxing model. Dana White has expressed a desire to change boxing's business model, aim to get rid of traditional sanctioning bodies and operate under a more controlled promotional and owned structure. Um, yeah, so it's to avoid issues with personal sponsor branding. Um, so Mercutio Salzman, WBC, we know he has gotten into it, if that's how you say it. It got into it with Terrence Crawford. He does not. It says he denounces the Zuffer boxing idea here, so he doesn't like it. So that tells you something. That even the golden ticket of an organization sanctioning body doesn't like it. Um, it just really is one of those things where you say, hey, why is that? Why is that? Why? But nonetheless, we are near the end of the episode, and we've been getting into it. My stance is I think boxers should be allowed. I get that with your partners, they don't like how a rival partnering or drink brand can be on something and it causes issues because they don't like it. Because the UFC secures their own partnershiping in the ring and all of that, as does boxing for every event. But it's never been a problem who's got what on their shorts. But apparently for the UFC mixed martial arts, they don't like that the other brands are being showed in their platforms and whatever not. You know how it is. You know how it is. It's a good old fashioned turf war, honestly, if you ask me. That's what I call it. But nonetheless, that is this week's weigh-in. This is the weigh-in by Benoit Chestnut, the occasional pop in Sebastian Romero, and that's really all I got for you on this one. I as as the content is getting a little, we're in the beginning of the year, so for boxing it always slows down, and as you know, for our wrestling FPs, it's always up and up because it's all over the place. The biggest dual meets happen in wrestling now, and as when it comes to boxing, it's the beginning of the year. Not a lot of good stuff going, but don't worry, this year has not disappointed. So that's all I got. Weighing out. The way in